The digital hum of a late-night study session often lulled Sarah into a familiar trance. Her phone, a constant companion, lay beside her, glowing softly in the dim light of her dorm room. It was an ordinary Tuesday, indistinguishable from 100 others, until a subtle vibration shattered the mundane. A new notification, usually just a text from a friend or an overdue assignment reminder. But this time, a peculiar icon appeared, a camera roll update from an unfamiliar source at an impossible hour. A shiver, light as a whisper, traced its way down her spine. With a click, the gallery opened, revealing a single, newly added image. It was a photograph of her, sleeping, taken from the far corner of her own room, an angle she never saw, never considered. Her breath caught in her throat. She lived alone. She had locked her door just hours before. The thought that someone or something had been in her room, watching her, documenting her most vulnerable state, was a cold, alien fear. The silence of the dorm room suddenly felt vast, suffocating. Who took this picture? How did they get in? The questions swirled, each one colder than the last, leading her to one inescapable, terrifying conclusion. This was no prank. This was a violation.
The fear quickly solidified into cold, sharp anger. Sarah wasn't one to flee, she was one to investigate. Her immediate task was not to call the police, not yet, without tangible proof, but to turn the tables on her unseen intruder. She needed eyes that never blinked. The solution was a cheap Wi-Fi security camera she'd bought months ago for a trip, forgotten in a storage box. It promised live feed, motion detection, and a wide-angle lens, exactly what she needed to reclaim her sanctuary. She worked with methodical, frantic efficiency. Her mind raced, dismissing every logical possibility, a glitch, a remote hack, a friend's tasteless joke. The clarity of the photograph, the precise, invasive angle, suggested a physical presence, a person, inside her locked room. As the final setup notification popped up, device online, a sliver of relief cut through her terror. The camera's lens now reflected the room like a silent, watchful eye. She slid into bed, but sleep was miles away, replaced by an anxious anticipation for the clock to strike 3:19 a.m.
Hours bled together in the stark digital glow of the phone screen. Sarah's attention was chained to the live feed, a grainy, black and white static image of her own empty room, the bed covers pulled up to her chin. The smallest shift in shadow sent a jolt through her, but the screen remained stubbornly, frustratingly still. The silence was the worst torment. It was not the peace of a sleeping building, but a suffocating void, amplifying every nervous gulp and every shallow breath. She listened for the creak of a floorboard, the turn of a lock, anything to give weight to her suspicion, but there was only the vast emptiness of the night. She pulled up the invasive photograph once more, scrutinizing the pixels, searching for an aberration, a flicker of light, a reflection, anything that could reveal the photographer. The image offered no comfort, only the chilling, undeniable proof of proximity. Time crawled toward the minute marked by the original intrusion, 3:19 a.m. This hour, once meaningless, was now a milestone, a preordained rendezvous with the thing that shared her space. She felt the terrible certainty that tonight the camera would finally catch a glimpse of the truth. As the digital numbers flipped to 3:19, a crushing pressure seemed to descend upon the room. Her body locked up, a sudden, profound inability to move, to shout, to even draw a full breath. She was trapped,
watching herself on the screen, completely helpless. Then, a flicker, a glitch in the live feed. The image on the screen jumped, then resolved. In that one brief moment of digital disruption, the scene had changed, irrevocably.
The pressure finally lifted, releasing Sarah from her strange paralysis. She shot upright in bed, eyes frantically searching the room. The real Sarah was awake, her heart hammering a desperate rhythm against her ribs. She was seated exactly where the video feed showed her, but the memory of movement was completely absent. Dismissing the live feed, she scrambled to the camera's saved history. The footage from 3:19 a.m. was time-stamped, undeniable. She hit play, her entire body tensing as she watched her own doppelganger on the screen. The figure, herself, sat motionless for nearly a minute. There was no expression, no indication of consciousness, just a vacant, open-eyed stare aimed directly at the lens. It was the face of a portrait, utterly devoid of life, yet terrifyingly present. And then the figure slowly, deliberately raised one hand, reaching out of the blanket. It wasn't a stretch or a casual adjustment. The motion was mechanical, measured, and focused. It pointed directly at the camera, then, chillingly, at the phone on her chest. The figure in the video was communicating. It knew the camera was there. It knew Sarah was watching, and it was acknowledging her, reaching through the feed, through the hours, to touch her. The cold dread returned, this time with a sickening certainty. This wasn't sleepwalking. This was being controlled. The video ended with the figure slumping back onto the pillows, returning to an inert sleep. Sarah frantically backed out of the app. She had proof, but it was proof of something impossible, something that demanded a witness who wouldn't immediately call her crazy.
The morning sun did little to dispel the chilling certainty of the night's events. Sarah desperately sought refuge in the digital connection, reaching out to the only person she thought might believe her, her older sister, Chloe, 3 states away. She needed confirmation that her proof wasn't a hallucination. Once Chloe answered, Sarah spoke in hurried, breathless whispers, recounting the photo, the setup, and the horrific, silent footage. She sent the video file, holding her breath as the digital progress bar slowly crawled toward completion. The act of sharing it felt like splitting the burden of her sanity. Chloe's reply was immediate, but her voice was laced with concern, not terror. She watched the video, reviewed the timestamp, and confirmed the strangeness of the posture. Yet there was a hesitation, a tone of rationalizing the impossible that Sarah immediately recognized. "It's a bad case of sleepwalking, Sarah," Chloe said finally. "Disorientation. It happens. You sat up, looked at the camera because the light disturbed you, and fell back asleep." But Sarah knew the difference between sleepwalking and that terrifying, blank-eyed, deliberate stare into the lens. Then, Chloe mentioned something Sarah had almost forgotten: their childhood. "Remember Mom talking about those phases you had? The night terrors, the sitting up? You just don't remember any of it." A cold realization struck Sarah. This behavior wasn't new. It was a return. The unsettling implication was clear. If she had done this before, how many other nights had she sat up, staring, moving without a trace of memory? And why had it taken a single photograph and a cheap camera to bring this terrifying internal absence back to life?
Sleepwalking was a safe explanation, but it felt thin and dishonest, like a bandage over a gaping wound. Sarah couldn't shake the terrifying focus of the figure in the video. She turned her research inward, desperate to locate the source of her childhood terrors and understand what connection they had to the digital intrusion. Her search led her not to medical forums, but to old family photos and archived emails. She was looking for a time, a place, or perhaps a person associated with those forgotten nights, a detail her waking mind had deliberately exiled. She found an old email from her mother years before, referencing the moving of Sarah's crib. It spoke of a dark spot in the nursery, a draft or a strange sound that seemed to draw Sarah's eye every night. The email detailed moving the crib specifically away from the corner. The link was too precise to be coincidence. This dark spot, this corner, was a magnet. With a sense of clinical dread, Sarah decided to replicate the conditions, to see if the room itself held the key to the entity that used her body. As she stood in the corner, holding the phone, a palpable drop in temperature washed over her, raising goosebumps along her arms. It felt heavy, a cold pressure that had nothing to do with the outside weather. It felt like standing directly in a silent, invisible audience. She backed away, heart pounding, but as she did, the phone vibrated with a new message. It wasn't Chloe, it wasn't a friend, it was a file, transferred to her phone without prompt or notification from an unknown sender, a short audio clip.
Her finger hovered over the screen, dread mixing with a terrible need to know. The file name was gibberish, a random string of numbers and letters, but the source felt entirely too familiar. With a shaky resolve, Sarah clicked play, bracing herself for anything, a voice, a scream, a threat. The clip began not with words, but with white noise, the low, static hiss of an empty recording. Sarah waited, her breath held tight. Then something emerged from the static. Not a voice, but a sound of pure environment, the unmistakable, quiet sound of her own breathing, asleep in her bed. But soon the breathing shifted. It became shallow, halting, and then, unnervingly, it seemed to sync with the silence surrounding the sleeping rhythm. It was a secondary breath, a pause between Sarah's own inhales and exhales, close, wet, and utterly foreign. The clip ended with a sound that froze the blood in her veins, a faint, soft hum that resolved into a short, almost loving sigh, ending right at the moment the figure in the camera footage had pointed its finger. It was intimate, possessive, and fundamentally wrong. The violation was no longer distant or purely visual. It was auditory, a sound profile of a presence that had stood inches from her face, breathing her air. Sarah realized the intruder didn't just film her, it listened to her. It had been sharing her space, waiting. Every shadow was a hiding place, every creak a footstep. Her rational mind was completely fractured. She knew what she had to do next. She couldn't stay. She had to break the connection, leave the room, and perhaps leave the campus entirely.
The backpack was packed, a hurried collection of necessities, anything to sever the link to this infected room. Sarah's impulse was primal, escape. She needed light, people, and distance from the oppressive silence that now felt like a living membrane surrounding her. She pulled harder, desperation giving way to physical exertion, but the door wouldn't budge. Then, a soft, sickening sound stopped her cold. The mechanism she had just unlocked, the heavy deadbolt, was slowly, quietly engaging itself again. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The entity wasn't just observing her, it was present, anticipating her move and actively preventing her escape. It had seen her intention and had simply locked her in, using the room's own security against her.
With the door closed and sealed by an invisible captor, her panic dissolved into a cold, self-preserving pragmatism. She couldn't fight the walls, but she could fight the source. If the presence was drawn to her, if it sought her at 3:19 a.m., she would deny it the stage. The bed was the place of the violation, the canvas for its digital portrait. She would not return to it. She spread a thin blanket directly onto the floor under the merciless, watchful eye of her security camera. She had nowhere to run, so she decided to wait, awake and defiant.
Lying rigid on the cold floor, Sarah stared unblinking at the night vision lens above. She was trading comfort for control, silence for defiance. The hours dragged, marked only by the shifting weight of the shadows and the blue glow of her phone, which was now recording every second of her conscious vigil. Around 1 a.m., the cold intensified, not as a draft, but as a dense, radiating chill that seemed to emanate from the floor beneath her. Her muscles ached from the tension, and the lack of sleep gnawed at her, pulling her toward the vulnerable state the entity craved. Then, the corner moved. Not a shadow shift, but a subtle distortion in the static-laced image of the security feed, a shimmer, like heat haze or a warping of the air itself. The entity wasn't trying to hide anymore. It was manifesting, drawn by her conscious attention. As the digital clock on her phone flipped to 3:19 a.m., the feeling of pressure returned, heavier and faster than before. Sarah felt the familiar paralysis creeping into her limbs, but this time her mind fought back, holding on to the terror as a weapon against sleep. A darker, impossibly dense shape emerged from the corner. It wasn't defined, no face, no limbs, just a mass that swallowed light and sound. It drifted, slow and absolute, across the floor toward her isolated spot. The shadow reached her, enveloping her space. Sarah felt a profound, cold touch, not physical, but mental, a silencing presence pressing into her consciousness. She held the final thought in her mind, a message to the camera. I see you.
Morning returned, but it brought no comfort. Sarah woke with a blinding headache and a confusion far deeper than fatigue. She was back in her bed, tucked neatly under the covers, the bare wooden floor a testament to the night's failed defiance. The room was silent, clean, and utterly empty. The first thing she checked was the camera. The security camera was still mounted on the shelf, its small blue LED glowing reassuringly. But when she opened the app, the footage from 3:19 a.m. until the moment she woke was gone, deleted. Not just blacked out, but scrubbed clean from the cloud and the local card. Only one piece of evidence remained, the original invasive photograph of her sleeping self. The image that started it all, still saved to her camera roll, impossible to erase, impossible to explain. It was the trophy of an entity that knew exactly what to keep and what to destroy. The point was not to hurt her, not physically. The point was to prove control, to demonstrate that no lock, no camera, and no effort of her conscious mind could stop it from entering, moving her body, or erasing her memory. She had only been allowed to see just enough to be terrifyingly aware. Sarah didn't call the police. She didn't call Chloe. She simply gathered her phone, her backpack, and her keys. She didn't need to flee the room. She needed to flee the connection. She decided to take a semester off, to move far away, to change her number, to reset her life. As she stood by the door, hand on the handle, she had one final fleeting urge, to delete the original photo, to convince herself it was all a dream, but she couldn't. She needed to know what she was running from. She opened the door, stepped into the busy hallway,
and became just another tired student leaving campus.